Every culture has its unique spin on magic. From the whispered incantations of ancient sorcerers to the vibrant rituals of modern practitioners, magic exists in countless forms, each with its own unique power and purpose. Get ready to put your magical knowledge to the test and see how many of these types you recognize. Black magic, often regarded as the dark counterpart to white magic, refers to the use of supernatural powers for malevolent purposes. It is a term steeped in fear and mystery, associated with harmful practices intended to manipulate, curse, or cause destruction. Historically, black magic has been tied to the invocation of demonic forces, necromancy, communicating with the dead, and sorcery, with the intent to bring about suffering or death. Originating from ancient civilizations, its roots are often traced back to early Mesopotamian, Egyptian, and Hellenistic practices where darker rites and rituals were said to call upon malevolent spirits. The Greeks used the term goisha to describe these practices, implying deceitful or dangerous magic. In mythology, black magic frequently appears as the forbidden knowledge of the gods, wielded by sorcerers or witches who sought to dominate others through unnatural means. In medieval Europe, black magic was most famously associated with witchcraft, with accusations often leading to witch hunts and trials. Practitioners were thought to make pacts with the devil, offering their souls in exchange for power. Similarly, in Norse mythology, the use of scythe, a form of magic sometimes linked with darker practices, allowed the user to control fate, curse enemies, or summon spirits. This form of magic was considered dangerous and was often treated with suspicion. The dark arts, as they were often called, were believed to operate outside the boundaries of morality and were condemned by religious authorities. Practitioners of black magic were often labeled as witches, warlocks, or sorcerers, feared by society due to the belief that they consorted with demons or malevolent entities. These individuals were thought to harness destructive power for personal gain, whether to curse an enemy, invoke plagues, or raise the dead. One of the most well-known examples of black magic being used or referenced today is through modern practices of voodoo or hoodoo, particularly in the form of curses or hexes. In regions like Haiti, parts of the southern United States, especially Louisiana, voodoo practices sometimes involve rituals that are perceived as dark magic. While much of voodoo centers on healing, spiritual connection, and protection, certain aspects, like the infamous voodoo doll, have been tied to harmful magic where pins or spells are used to cause pain or misfortune to a specific person. Whether a witch casting curses, a necromancer calling upon the spirits of the dead, or a sorcerer summoning demons, black magic has long carried the weight of fear and moral condemnation in many societies throughout history. Apotropaic magic, derived from the Greek word apotropaion, meaning to turn away, is a form of magic used to ward off evil influences or misfortune. This type of magic was widespread in ancient civilizations such as Greece, Egypt, Mesopotamia, and Rome. The primary goal of apotropaic magic was protection, often involving objects, rituals, or symbols believed to have the power to avert harm or the evil eye. In the ancient world, this form of magic was closely tied to everyday life, as people believed in malevolent forces or spirits that could bring sickness, bad luck, or other misfortunes if left unchecked. Amulets, incantations, and carved symbols were among the most common methods of defense. In mythology and history, apotropaic magic was deeply intertwined with religious practices. For instance, in ancient Egypt, people wore amulets depicting the Eye of Horus, believing it could protect them from danger. The Greeks and Romans also employed such symbols, with the Gorgonian, the head of Medusa, being one of the most iconic protective images. Placing the terrifying face of Medusa on shields, doorways, or statues was believed to repel evil spirits or enemies. Even certain gods, like Hecate in Greece, were invoked as protectors against dark forces. This type of magic was often practical, focusing on tangible results like safeguarding homes, cities, or individuals from harm. Those who practiced apotropaic magic were not always professional magicians, but often priests, healers, or even common folk who learned specific rituals or carried protective charms. In certain cultures, the power of apotropaic magic was considered a natural extension of one's connection to the divine. In ancient Greece, statues of Hermes, called Herms, were placed at crossroads to offer protection and guidance, and certain priests would oversee rituals of purification to keep harmful spirits at bay. In many ways, Apotropaic magic was a form of defense against the unknown, helping people feel safer in a world filled with unseen dangers. Evocation and Invocation are two distinct yet intertwined practices in the realm of magic, primarily centered on calling forth spiritual or supernatural forces. Evocation, from the Latin evocare, meaning to call forth, involves summoning entities, such as spirits or demons, into a visible presence, often for guidance, protection, or insight. Ancient cultures like Mesopotamia and Egypt practiced evocation, as did later Greek and Roman traditions. In these societies, magicians, priests, or oracles would perform rituals to draw forth a spirit's presence, often using specific incantations, symbols, or drawn circles to safeguard themselves. An evoked spirit could appear in a variety of forms, and its presence was generally kept at a controlled distance, serving as a tool or a source of knowledge. Invocation, on the other hand, has its roots in the Latin word invocare, meaning to call upon or to invite inward. This practice involves summoning a deity or spirit within oneself, inviting its power to merge temporarily with the practitioners. Invocation was especially prevalent in Greek and Roman religious practices, where priests or priestesses would invoke deities like Apollo or Dionysus in ceremonies and festivals, allowing the god's essence to inspire or speak through them. In ancient Greece, for instance, oracles of Apollo at Delphi would invoke the god's spirit, entering a trance state believed to be Apollo's influence, allowing them to give prophecies. Unlike evocation, invocation aims for unity with the summoned power, making the practitioner both the vessel and the voice for divine messages. In many traditions, those who practiced evocation or invocation were seen as highly trained individuals, priests, oracles, shamans, or magicians, depending on the culture. They often underwent extensive spiritual preparation, as both forms of magic required focused mental and spiritual discipline. The risk and respect surrounding these practices also marked a deep reverence for the powers invoked. While evocation involved containment and control of a summoned presence, invocation was viewed as a form of devotion, allowing humans to channel divine will directly. Thus, each practice offered unique pathways to understanding and connecting with the mystical world, revealing the rich complexity of ancient beliefs in supernatural forces. If you enjoy this type of content, consider subscribing. It's free and you can unsubscribe later. Ceremonial magic, often called high magic or ritual magic, is an intricate, time-honored practice aimed at summoning higher spiritual entities or manipulating supernatural forces. Unlike the simpler spells and charms of folk magic, ceremonial magic is a grand, methodical art. Practitioners follow detailed rituals, often with sacred tools like wands, swords, and pentacles, creating a sense of profound, mystical ceremony. Its origins stretch back to the priestly rites of ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia, where magicians sought to communicate with gods or tap into divine energies. As these traditions evolved, they blended with Hellenistic philosophy, alchemy, astrology, and medieval mysticism, creating a complex web of knowledge. Grimoires, or magical textbooks, such as the Key of Solomon and the Book of Abramelin, became important guides for magicians, offering instructions for summoning angels, demons, or other spiritual entities. These rites often involved invoking divine names, drawing protective circles, and reciting sacred chants. Practitioners believed that, through such rituals, they could gain knowledge, power, and wisdom, or even achieve divine union. Ceremonial magic was seen as a way to bridge the gap between the human and divine realms, following a strict code of purity, discipline, and spiritual devotion. The practitioners of ceremonial magic were typically learned individuals, often called magicians, occultists, or adepts. They were usually well-versed in philosophy, astrology, and ancient religious texts, striving to align themselves with the divine order. Notable figures like Hermes Trismegistus in the Hermetic tradition or John Dee, the famed Elizabethan magician, devoted themselves to ceremonial magic as a means of transcending ordinary reality and unlocking the mysteries of the cosmos. In these traditions, magic was not viewed as a corrupt or evil force, but rather as a sacred science, a means of attaining enlightenment and spiritual mastery. Chaos magic is a modern form of magical practice that originated in the late 20th century, emerging in the 1970s in England with influences from occultism, particularly the works of Austin Osman Spare and later Peter J. Carroll. It is often described as postmodern magic because it breaks away from traditional structures and dogmas of earlier magical systems, focusing instead on the personal will and belief of the practitioner. The core idea behind chaos magic is that belief itself is a tool to shape reality, meaning the practitioner can adopt, change, or discard belief systems as needed to achieve their goals. Unlike more rigid magical practices, chaos magic encourages experimentation and flexibility, using symbols, rituals, and deities from different traditions but with a fluid approach. Chaos magic doesn't tie itself to any specific era or mythology, but instead borrows elements from various sources, myths, religions, and occult systems, while rejecting the need for strict adherence. One of its most well-known influences is Austin Osman Spare's concept of the Goetia, a formless power that individuals can harness through willpower. Rather than relying on long-established pantheons or cosmologies, chaos magicians, as they are called, shape their magic using whatever symbols or entities they feel are effective, making it highly adaptable to modern times. Because of this, chaos magic differs from traditional systems like Hermeticism or ceremonial magic, which involve detailed rituals and long-standing traditions. Practitioners of chaos magic often use techniques like sigil magic, where symbols are charged with intent, or spontaneous rituals based on altered states of consciousness to bend reality to their will. In chaos magic, what matters is not whether the ritual or belief is true in an objective sense, but whether it works for the practitioner. Chaos magicians believe that reality itself is malleable, and that through the disciplined use of will and intent, they can create meaningful change in their personal worlds. This adaptability and reliance on personal belief over dogma make chaos magic a unique form of magic, thriving in an era where traditional structures of power and belief are often questioned. Sigils, though not a type of magic in themselves, have been integral to various magical practices throughout history. They are symbolic representations imbued with power, used to channel specific intentions or summon spiritual entities. The word sigil comes from the Latin sigillum, meaning seal, and historically, it referred to the signature or seal of a divine or supernatural entity. These symbols were believed to be a means of controlling spirits or guiding forces toward the will of the practitioner. Sigils appear prominently in medieval grimoires, where they were used to summon angels, demons, or other spirits, and later became central in occult practices during the Renaissance. The use of sigils is most notably associated with European ceremonial magic and the occult traditions, particularly in texts like the Lesser Key of Solomon and the Sworn Book of Honorius. In these works, sigils were drawn in precise, ritualistic patterns to represent the names or attributes of spiritual beings, enabling practitioners to communicate with and compel them. This practice was especially prominent in the medieval period, where magicians, sorcerers, or summoners, often called magisters or adepts, used sigils as part of rituals involving invocation and evocation. Their intricate designs and forms varied depending on the being or force the magician sought to control, and each sigil was crafted with meticulous care, representing the true essence of the entity. Gray magic occupies the intriguing middle ground between white, benevolent, and black, malevolent magic. Neither wholly good nor entirely dark, gray magic emphasizes balance, harnessing power for practical purposes rather than purely moral or harmful goals. Historically, gray magic appears in various cultures, including ancient Egypt, early Mesopotamian societies, and later European folklore. Rather than strict alignment with a single ethical perspective, gray magic allowed practitioners to address specific needs or challenges, whether for protection, empowerment, or conflict resolution, sometimes in ways that could appear neutral or ambiguous. It avoided the extremes of both protective and destructive magic, valuing the wisdom of flexibility in dealing with life's uncertainties. One of the best-known examples of gray magic is found in the practices of cunning folk and hedge witches in medieval and early modern Europe. These healers and wise people often operated outside formal religious institutions, offering cures, charms, or solutions to people in need. They might create amulets for protection, craft potions to attract love or luck, or curse and lift curses as needed. Unlike black magic, their spells and rituals were not malicious but could involve ambiguous or morally neutral practices. This versatility made gray magic unique, enabling practitioners to adapt to the complex situations they faced. Gray magic practitioners were thus seen as essential community members, especially when local institutions could not address specific problems or threats. In myth and folklore, gray magic often shows up in the hands of neutral or morally complex characters. For example, the Norse god Odin embodies gray magical principles. His quest for wisdom led him to sacrifice for knowledge, using runes and cedar, a form of Norse magic, for both protective and potentially manipulative purposes. The same can be said for figures like Merlin from Arthurian legend, who wielded magic to support King Arthur while also delving into morally ambiguous realms to serve what he deemed the greater good. Gray magic practitioners, whether seen as cunning folk, hedge witches, or wise ones, ultimately valued pragmatism, embracing the balance between light and dark forces in a nuanced world. Divination is one of the oldest and most widespread magical practices, believed to reveal hidden knowledge, predict the future, or interpret the will of the gods. The term itself comes from the Latin divinare, meaning to foresee or to be inspired by a god. Throughout history, divination has been practiced in various forms across cultures, from the ancient civilizations of Mesopotamia and Egypt to Greece, Rome, and China. In Greek mythology, divination was seen as a way to communicate with the divine, where gods such as Apollo, through his oracle at Delphi, were believed to offer guidance through cryptic messages. People sought answers for personal, political, or societal issues, believing that the future could be shaped by understanding omens, dreams, and other signs. One of the most famous divinatory practices was augury, practiced by the ancient Romans. Augurs, the official diviners of Rome, would observe the flight patterns of birds to interpret the will of the gods, especially before significant decisions like war. In ancient Greece, the Delphic oracle would go into a trance to relay messages from Apollo, while in Mesopotamia, priests read the entrails of sacrificed animals in a practice known as haruspicy. Each culture had its own methods of accessing divine knowledge, whether through dreams, oniromancy, the stars, astrology, or natural signs, omens. These practices were not seen as superstition but rather as essential tools for kings, generals, and everyday people to navigate life's uncertainties. One well-known example is tarot card reading, a popular form of divination that involves using a deck of tarot cards to gain insight into a person's past, present, and future. Many people consult tarot readers to seek guidance on personal issues, relationships, or life decisions. In addition to tarot, astrology remains a significant form of divination for many individuals. Astrologers interpret the positions and movements of celestial bodies to forecast events and offer advice based on an individual's astrological chart, which is created based on the date, time, and location of their birth. Moreover, some cultures maintain traditional practices such as I Ching or I Ching readings, where individuals throw coins or sticks to generate a hexagram that is then interpreted for guidance. These contemporary practices highlight the enduring human desire to seek knowledge and understanding of the future, reflecting a deep-rooted belief in the ability of divination to provide clarity in an uncertain world. Goetia was seen as a powerful, often controversial form of magic. Unlike religious rituals directed at gods, Goetia was used to summon daimons or lesser spirits, thought to exist between mortal and divine realms. Over time, this magical practice became notorious, especially as medieval demonology linked it to the summoning of dangerous or malevolent spirits. The Ars Goetia, the first section of the 17th century grimoire known as the Lesser Key of Solomon, is the most renowned source for Goetic practices. This text provides detailed instructions for invoking and commanding a set of 72 spirits. For those who don't know, these 72 spirits, referred to as the Goetic demons or the lesser spirits of Solomon, are supernatural entities whose origins trace back to medieval traditions. According to legend, King Solomon himself bound these spirits and utilized their powers to achieve extraordinary feats during his reign. Each spirit in the Ars Goetia possesses distinct abilities, wisdom, or influence over specific aspects of the world, ranging from uncovering secrets to teaching arts or healing. Practitioners are guided through exacting rituals, incantations, and symbols to summon and control these spirits, tapping into their arcane knowledge while ensuring protection from potential harm. Each of the 72 spirits has a unique title, rank, and set of abilities. Kings, princes, marquises, dukes, and presidents reflect the hierarchies established in the text, imbuing them with status and influencing the manner in which they are invoked. Practitioners of Goetia typically conducted elaborate rituals using specific tools, such as magical circles, symbols, and incantations, to bind spirits and protect themselves from harm. Goetia required deep knowledge and careful precision. Without it, summoning a spirit could lead to disastrous consequences, as unchecked spirits were believed to be capable of causing illness, misfortune, or even death. Those who practiced Goetia were often called conjurers or sorcerers and were seen as skilled, if potentially dangerous, figures. Unlike priests or healers, Goetic conjurers existed on society's fringes, often met with suspicion. In medieval Europe, Goetic magic became increasingly demonized, as Christian authorities linked it with heresy and witchcraft. Despite this, Goetia persisted as an underground practice, its legacy enduring through mystical and esoteric traditions. For centuries, the practice symbolized humankind's daring attempt to bridge the realms of the seen and unseen, a bold endeavor to control powers beyond human understanding. Natural magic, a term dating back to the Middle Ages and Renaissance, refers to the use of natural elements and forces to achieve desired effects, relying on the inherent properties of plants, minerals, and animals. Unlike other branches of magic associated with supernatural or divine intervention, natural magic seeks to harness the innate powers found within nature itself. This practice was often seen as a means of understanding and manipulating the hidden virtues within the natural world. One early reference comes from the Hermetic texts of ancient Egypt and Greece, where practitioners believed that natural objects held specific, influential energies that could be channeled for healing, protection, or even love. Natural magic was prominent during the Renaissance, influenced heavily by Neoplatonism and figures such as the philosopher Marsilio Ficino. Ficino and other scholars believed the world was connected by unseen, sympathetic forces, and that learning the signatures or unique characteristics of plants and minerals could reveal their uses. During this period, alchemists and philosophers expanded their studies, blending mystical, natural, and scientific concepts to deepen their understanding of the universe. Certain herbs and stones, for instance, were believed to hold curative properties, while others might help in predicting the future or attracting fortune. In folklore, myths often featured wise men and women who utilized such knowledge, blending it into rituals for love spells, protection charms, or remedies. Those who practiced natural magic were often known as cunning folk in England, wise women across Europe, or simply healers and herbalists. They were not necessarily priests or magicians, but people skilled in the properties of the natural world, learned through folk knowledge or mentorship. Sex magic is a form of mystical practice that uses sexual energy and rituals to attain spiritual enlightenment, manifestation, or union with the divine. This practice is often rooted in ancient tantric traditions from Hindu and Buddhist cultures, with origins reaching back to at least the 1st millennium BCE in India. Tantra, a spiritual path incorporating sacred sexuality, was not about lust or physical pleasure, but rather the transformative power of union and energy exchange. The sexual act, when consecrated, symbolized the union of opposites, such as Shiva and Shakti in Hindu mythology, representing the cosmic duality that brings forth creation. Rituals using sexual energy allowed practitioners to tap into primal forces, believed to awaken spiritual insight or activate powerful life energies. Medieval Western practices also adopted sex magic through occult systems influenced by alchemy and Hermeticism. European practitioners, especially during the Renaissance, often linked sexual rituals to the goal of attaining hidden knowledge or mystical experiences. For example, followers of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn and later Aleister Crowley's Thelema, rooted in the early 20th century, practiced sex magic as a way to align one's will with the universe. Crowley famously saw sexual acts, particularly when paired with focused intent, as a bridge to higher spiritual awareness. Alchemists also viewed the sexual union of male and female energies as metaphorically transforming base substances into gold, symbolizing the attainment of spiritual purity and enlightenment. Practitioners of sex magic, often priests, priestesses, or devotees in religious temples, were seen as intermediaries between gods and humans. In tantric traditions, gurus guided initiates in meditative and physical practices that used sexual energy to awaken kundalini, inner life force energy. Rather than being seen as sinful or indulgent, sex magic was revered, with participants practicing it as a way to channel divine power. Over centuries, such traditions have evolved, though the core belief remains. Sex, when conducted with intent and reverence, is a potent, sacred force for transformation and connection with the universe. Shamanism, one of humanity's oldest spiritual practices, dates back to the Upper Paleolithic period and extends through numerous cultures, from Siberian and Mongolian tribes to the indigenous peoples of North and South America, Asia, and beyond. At its core, shamanism bridges the natural and supernatural realms, establishing communication between humans and the spirits of nature, ancestors, and otherworldly beings. Central to shamanic belief is the concept that all things possess a spirit or consciousness, creating a world richly inhabited by invisible energies. This animistic worldview allows shamans, acting as intermediaries, to engage in ritualistic journeys into these spiritual dimensions to seek wisdom, healing, and guidance for their communities. Shamans, known by names such as Noyad among the Sami, Angakok among the Inuit, and Kam in Siberia, use a variety of methods to enter trance-like states and access spiritual realms. Tools such as drums, rattles, rhythmic chanting, and dance help them induce altered consciousness, allowing them to journey into other worlds. The purpose of these journeys varies. Some shamans seek to heal the sick by restoring their spirits, others seek knowledge or prophetic visions, while some even combat malevolent spirits. Unlike many other mystical practices, shamanism's primary focus is often on serving and protecting the community, maintaining harmony within the tribe by addressing both physical ailments and spiritual imbalances. Historically, shamanism held deep cultural significance across various regions, from the shamanic rituals in Mongolia's steppes to the ancient practices of the Americas. The power of the shaman was rooted in their relationship with the spirits, often passing knowledge and methods down through generations. A shaman's role was essential for the community's survival, with myths frequently depicting them as gifted with supernatural abilities, such as shape-shifting or communicating with animals. These legendary figures stand as a testament to shamanism's enduring legacy, connecting past cultures to the natural and supernatural worlds in a unique symbiosis that continues in some communities even today. Sympathetic magic, one of the earliest forms of ritual magic, is based on the principle of like attracts like, or the idea that objects with a symbolic resemblance can influence one another. In sympathetic magic, actions, images, or items are believed to hold a connection to their real-world counterparts, allowing practitioners to affect distant people, events, or objects through representation. For instance, early cultures would create effigies, such as clay or straw figures resembling people, and imbue these figures with the intent to heal, harm, or attract fortune. Ancient cave paintings from the Paleolithic era, found in locations like Lascaux in France, depict animals that prehistoric humans would hunt. Anthropologists theorize these paintings served a ritualistic purpose, whereby drawing and sometimes harming the animal image, hunters sought to influence real hunts, ensuring success and safety. Similarly, ancient Mesopotamians practiced forms of sympathetic magic to ward off disease and misfortune by transferring a curse or ailment from a person to an object, which was then destroyed or cast away. Across the globe, from indigenous tribes in the Americas to traditional cultures in Asia, people relied on similar rituals, demonstrating that sympathetic magic transcended cultural boundaries. The magical belief was especially evident in fertility rites, where actions symbolizing growth or abundance were believed to enhance the fertility of land and people alike. Practitioners of sympathetic magic were often priests, shamans, or cunning folk, individuals seen as intermediaries between the physical and spiritual worlds. These figures wielded knowledge of sacred symbols and potent rites, utilizing everyday objects imbued with magical intention. Although regarded with awe, these practitioners also faced suspicion, especially in eras when dominant religious beliefs condemned magic. Despite opposition, sympathetic magic persisted across millennia, blending with folk traditions and influencing early modern witchcraft and ceremonial practices, where the echoes of this ancient form of magic continue to resonate. Thaumaturgy, often described as the art of wonderworking or miracle performing, is a form of magic deeply rooted in religious and mystical traditions across several ancient and medieval societies. Derived from the Greek word thaumaturgia, which means miracle working, this type of magic was primarily focused on achieving awe-inspiring, benevolent outcomes that were often seen as divine interventions. Practiced predominantly in ancient Greece, Egypt, and in the Christian world during the Middle Ages, thaumaturgy was not merely conjuring tricks, but rather acts perceived as bridges between mortals and the divine. From summoning rain during droughts to healing the sick, thaumaturgy was commonly attributed to saints, prophets, or priests, those believed to have a deep spiritual connection to higher powers. In ancient myths and texts, practitioners of thaumaturgy, often called thaumaturges or thaumaturgists, were revered figures. In Greece, they included mystics like Apollonius of Tyana, who was said to heal and perform miraculous feats, and Pythagoras, whose knowledge extended into the supernatural. Christianity later expanded the role of the thaumaturge to include saints, such as Saint Francis of Assisi, who was known for his miraculous acts of healing and communication with animals. These acts of thaumaturgy were not regarded as traditional magic, but rather as gifts from the divine, granted by God to individuals of pure heart and high spiritual standing. This distinction allowed thaumaturges to be celebrated rather than feared, setting them apart from other practitioners of the occult. Thaumaturgy was often ritualistic, involving prayers, chants, or symbolic actions believed to invoke divine will. Unlike ceremonial magic, which relied heavily on complex rituals and symbols, thaumaturgy depended more on the thaumaturge's spiritual purity and devotion. For instance, a Christian saint might invoke God's name to heal an ailment, while an Egyptian priest might perform rites to ensure a good harvest by appealing to the gods. Over time, thaumaturgy became integrated into religious lore and folklore, inspiring myths and legends of saintly miracles and godly intervention. Thaumaturgy remains symbolic of humanity's quest to connect with the divine, revealing how cultures across time have sought to manifest miracles as evidence of divine grace in the mortal world. Witchcraft, a practice intertwined with human history and mythology, refers to the use of supernatural abilities or magical rituals to manipulate forces of nature or bring about change. This form of magic has roots stretching back to ancient civilizations. The Egyptians, Babylonians, Greeks, and Romans all had practices and rituals associated with magic, sometimes labeled as witchcraft in later interpretations. In many cultures, such as the Greco-Roman world, witchcraft was often connected to goddesses like Hecate and Isis, revered for their powers over the mysteries of life, death, and the unseen forces of the natural world. Rituals could involve incantations, herbs, potions, and symbols drawn to create protections, healing, curses, or foretell future events. Throughout history, the understanding of witchcraft has fluctuated, often influenced by social, political, and religious factors. In the Middle Ages, a significant shift occurred as Christian Europe began to associate magic with heresy, demonology, and rebellion against the Church. Witchcraft became linked with the devil, marking a stark contrast from the benevolent, protective roles it once held in earlier societies. This era saw the infamous witch trials in Europe and later in colonial America, particularly the late 16th to 17th centuries. Thousands, often women, were accused of witchcraft, subjected to intense persecution, torture, and execution. The term, which became a powerful social weapon, often used against those who defied social norms or held unconventional knowledge, particularly in herbal medicine or midwifery. Despite this persecution, folk practices and beliefs in witchcraft persisted, particularly in rural areas where cunning folk or wise women served as healers, protectors, and guides. In many traditions, these practitioners were respected members of their communities, drawing upon knowledge passed down through generations. They used herbs, charms, and rituals to ward off evil, heal ailments, and protect against misfortune. Witchcraft's legacy continues today, evolving through various neo-pagan movements like Wicca, which emerged in the 20th century as a reclamation of ancient traditions, emphasizing a connection to nature and ethical magical practices. Witchcraft endures as both a reminder of humanity's desire to harness hidden powers and a symbol of resilience against cultural suppression. Theurgy, often called divine magic, is a mystical practice rooted in the idea of drawing closer to the divine or uniting one's soul with higher spiritual realms. Unlike other types of magic that might aim to manipulate the physical world, Theurgy's purpose is deeply spiritual and philosophical, aiming for the purification and enlightenment of the practitioner. Its origins can be traced back to the late antiquity period, particularly within the Neoplatonic school of philosophy in the 3rd and 4th centuries CE. Developed by philosophers like Plotinus and later advanced by Iamblichus, Theurgy was not seen as a way to control gods or spirits, but as a path to become closer to them, allowing humans to transcend earthly limitations through divine connection. Theurgy was most influential in the Greco-Roman world, especially within the context of Neoplatonism, a school of thought that combined elements of Plato's philosophy with mystical, often ritualistic practices. Practitioners believed that humans, as imperfect beings, could achieve union with the divine through rites that invoked gods and cosmic forces. These rites often involved prayers, hymns, invocations, and the use of sacred symbols or tokens called symbola, which were believed to act as keys to access different levels of divine realms. Rituals varied in complexity but often required intense spiritual discipline, such as fasting and meditation, to attune the practitioner's soul to divine energies. Individuals who practiced theurgy were often called theurgists, a term that distinguished them from common magicians or sorcerers. Theurgists considered themselves scholars and philosophers seeking truth rather than power, and they pursued their craft with deep reverence and a sense of devotion. The practice of theurgy saw its decline with the rise of Christianity, which generally condemned pagan rituals. However, its legacy persisted, influencing later Western mystical traditions, including Renaissance Hermeticism and Kabbalistic studies. For centuries, theurgy has remained a significant example of how ancient beliefs blurred the line between philosophy and divine magic, with the ultimate aim of uniting the mortal with the divine. Alchemy, often called the art of transformation, is an ancient practice that dates back to ancient Egypt, Mesopotamia, and later Greco-Roman and Islamic civilizations. The roots of alchemy lie in the belief that all matter has the potential to change or evolve, leading to the legendary goals of transforming base metals into gold and creating the Philosopher's Stone, a substance believed to grant immortality. This quest to uncover universal secrets combined aspects of philosophy, mysticism, and early forms of science, shaping alchemy as a mystical practice that aimed to understand and master the hidden forces of nature. Alchemists believed their work mirrored the divine process of creation itself, attempting to uncover the mysteries that governed both the natural and supernatural realms. Throughout history, alchemy was practiced in 3 primary cultural streams: Chinese, Indian, and Western alchemy. Chinese alchemy focused on achieving spiritual immortality through elixirs and focused on inner transformation and harmony with nature. Indian alchemy, also called Rasayana, shared a similar aim for both physical and spiritual longevity, but additionally sought to improve mental and bodily well-being. Western alchemy, which flourished in the Middle Ages through the Renaissance, was influenced by both Greek and Arabic thought. The Arabic scholars preserved and expanded on Greek alchemical texts, which later re-entered Europe during the 12th century translations. The Hermetic and Gnostic influences in Western alchemy centered around a cosmic balance of opposites, often symbolized in the images of male and female energies, sun and moon, and other elemental forces. The practitioners of alchemy, known as alchemists, were not simply proto-chemists but spiritual seekers. Often working in secrecy, they used coded symbols and allegorical texts to pass down their knowledge, adding a sense of mystery and exclusivity. Alchemists believed that achieving their lofty goals required personal purification and moral integrity, as the transformation of materials was seen as parallel to the transformation of the soul. Figures like Hermes Trismegistus, a mythical figure linked with Hermetic wisdom, and Paracelsus, a Renaissance alchemist, helped lay the foundations for later scientific developments while keeping alchemy rooted in mystical traditions. Alchemy's legacy, blending mystical pursuit with the birth of early chemistry, is still felt today, as its symbolic language and goals reflect humanity's endless quest for wisdom, transformation, and transcendence. White magic, often seen as the antithesis of black magic, is traditionally defined as a form of magic used for benevolent purposes, healing, and protection. Its roots can be traced back to ancient civilizations where priestesses, druids, and shamans invoked divine powers or natural spirits to safeguard their communities. In Egyptian mythology, for instance, white magic was used in rituals for protection against evil forces, often invoking gods like Isis, who was believed to wield powerful, protective magic for her loved ones. Across the ancient Mediterranean, Greece, and Rome, practitioners crafted spells and charms designed to bring blessings, prosperity, and purification, always with the intent of enhancing life rather than manipulating or harming others. During the Middle Ages, white magic gained a complex reputation, often entwined with Christian beliefs as white witches and cunning folk emerged, individuals renowned for their herbal knowledge and protective charms. These practitioners, particularly in European folklore, would perform blessings, create amulets, and concoct remedies from nature to guard against disease, curses, and dark forces. White witches and cunning folk held an almost dual status in society. Some were venerated for their healing gifts, while others faced suspicion if their powers seemed too uncanny. Their protective practices often aligned with the local Christian customs, allowing them to walk a fine line between being revered healers and accused heretics. In more recent history, white magic continues to be linked with modern spiritual practices and Wicca, which emphasizes using one's power solely for constructive purposes. Known for their adherence to the Wiccan Rede, practitioners of Wicca, often referred to as Wiccans or white witches, use their knowledge of natural energies to bring harmony and healing to themselves and others. White magic in this context employs spells, rituals, and herbal concoctions, but always with a mindful intention. Whether used to protect, heal, or bless, white magic remains a reflection of the ideals of goodness, compassion, and respect for nature's power. In the mystical world of magic, Mancers are specialized practitioners who manipulate natural forces or elements, often referred to by the specific power they wield. The word Mancer comes from the Greek suffix mantia, meaning divination or prophecy, and over time, it evolved to signify control over certain elements or energies. Across mythological eras and cultures, these powerful individuals became central to the tales of gods, heroes, and mystics. From shaping fire to bending time, their abilities have been depicted with awe, fear, and fascination. Elemental Mancers are perhaps the most widely recognized. Throughout ancient mythology, figures such as pyromancers, hydromancers, aeromancers, and terramancers have appeared in various forms. Pyromancers, wielders of fire, were often seen as dangerous figures with the ability to burn fields or incite volcanic eruptions, as seen in Greek mythology's Hephaestus, the god of fire and blacksmithing. Hydromancers could call upon the waters, much like Poseidon, controlling the oceans and rivers. These elemental powers were not just seen as destructive. They could also be used to influence weather, calm storms, or protect people from natural disasters. These Mancers appeared in numerous myths from the Greco-Roman era, Nordic sagas, and Eastern traditions, where mastery of the elements was seen as both a divine gift and a tool for survival. Necromancers, often portrayed as dark and forbidden, have a long history in myth. In Greek mythology, necromancy was the art of communicating with the dead, often practiced to gain knowledge or summon spirits for guidance. The Homeric tale of Odysseus consulting the dead seer Tiresias during his journey through the underworld is one example. In later European folklore, necromancers were feared for their ability to raise the dead or control spirits, and their magic became associated with witchcraft. Despite its dark reputation, Necromancy also had a spiritual side, rooted in ancestor worship and the belief that the dead could protect the living. Rituals in ancient Egypt, China, and even medieval Europe reflected this duality, where necromancers were both feared and revered. Chronomancers, the rarest and most dangerous of all mancers, held sway over time itself. In ancient myth, time was often considered the domain of gods, such as Kronos in Greek mythology, who was the embodiment of time. Chronomancers were said to manipulate this force, bending time to their will. Whether slowing it down or glimpsing the future, their power was as tempting as it was perilous. These practitioners often walked a fine line between fate and chaos, and in myth, their meddling could lead to disastrous consequences. Chronomancers are often seen in later fantasy literature, inspired by myths of seers and gods who could traverse or alter time's flow, but historical associations with time magic are deeply linked to diviners and oracles. Beyond these main categories, there exist other specialized mancers, each with unique abilities. Herbomancers drew from the life of plants, using their knowledge of herbs and roots for healing or creating powerful poisons. In medieval and Renaissance Europe, many herbalists were considered witches due to their profound knowledge of plants and their effects on the body. Electromancers, who control electricity, have their roots in myths related to thunder gods, such as Zeus or Thor, who wielded lightning as their weapon of choice. Carnomancers, though less known, were believed to manipulate flesh, often being depicted as healers or, in darker tales, as those who could reshape or control the body at will. Throughout mythology and history, Mancers have represented the ultimate mastery of the natural world. Their abilities not only showcased the awe humans felt for the elements around them, but also reflected the dangers of overstepping into realms that were considered the domain of the divine. For deeper insights into magic and how to use it in real life, click on the video to your left. And for more captivating mythology content, check out the video to your right. If you found this video enjoyable, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for future uploads.